performance and scrutiny finance. First item on the agenda is apologies. Sorry, first item on the agenda is Rachel will start recording this particular meeting. Right. First item, apologies for absence.
No apologies, Chair.
No apologies. Okay. The second item is disclosure of personal and prejudiced interest. Members? No. Officers? No. Okay. Third item is a prohibition of whip votes and declarations of party whips. This is common onto all our scrutiny board meetings. No, right. Okay. Item 4 are the minutes of the previous meeting, pages 1 to 3. Any comments? No. Okay. Then we move on to item 5, which is the public question time. We have had a number of questions from a gentleman. What I've suggested to him this morning is that he give us a brief outline for 5 minutes on the particular questions, because this is the only group of questions we've had. Then we get as many answers that we possibly can off officers. And then if he wishes to come back in another 5 minutes to say anything, then fine. But they need to understand that this is a scrutiny board meeting. It is not anything other than that. So it's the questions that you've asked. If you would like to say who you are and what the questions are about. Over to you, Mr. Horton. Good morning, Mr. Horton. Are you ready? I don't know.
Hello, can you hear us all okay online?
Yes, you're coming through loud and clear online.
Fine, yeah.
Okay, Mr. Horton, can you hear us? Horton?
Doesn't seem to be.
He's still on mute, Chair.
Yeah.
He might have his speakers turned down, Chair. It might be worth sending him a message.
Public questions at the start of the Skyline.
No.
Ben, you're on, mate.
Are you on? We are sending him we're sending him a message now. Is it?
Well, he's not meant to hear anyone. It's just the speaker, the chair.
We don't know why he can't, unless his system is down or something.
He said, I can't hear anything. I can't hear him, but mic and speakers are working.
He's saying that he can't hear us because everything his side is working. But if all of you can hear us, then the system is this side's working okay.
It might be worth him logging out and trying to rejoin the group. Sometimes that works.
I suggest, Chair, that we go on to the capital budget and then come back to the public questions.
Well, we can do, but
And in the meantime, Ben Holton can find log back in again.
okay.
That suggests that.
Yeah, so I've messaged he's going to try logging out and rejoining.
Okay, then shall we move on then to item 6 is on the agenda, which is the revenue and capital budget monitoring report. Leader, would you like to say a few words before, or do you?
I'm in after Mr. Smith, if that's okay.
Okay. Then over to you, Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Chair. I will be brief on the basis that you'll have read the report and only draw your attention to the material matters. First quarter report went to Cabinet last month, a month later than normal cycle, as referenced in the report, due to Oracle implementation, but it was especially pleasing to note that we were able to produce the first quarter report in new version of Oracle. The most important recommendation is number 3, which was that Cabinet did approve my advice, which was around reinforcing the need for all service directors to contain their spending in year. Track record has been particularly impressive by service directors at getting back into balance over the life of the year, but it is going to be especially important this time round, I think, given that everyone is aware that local government budgets remain under enormous pressure. And I would state the obvious that recommendation 4 draws your attention to the fact that there is an overspend at the first quarter, not that surprising in the scheme of things. Section 1.1.4, as I've referenced, refers to the implementation of Oracle Fusion. Section 1.5 is important. I think, frankly, you would have to be on another planet to not be aware that local government budgets are under enormous pressure. Inflation, whilst it might be starting to drop a bit more, is still elevated compared to what we've had in recent years, and pretty much every authority up and down the land is overspending to some degree, and it's about mitigating pressures wherever possible. Section 2 summarises the gross overspend position by directorates, and I emphasise gross because I have got some sums that I advise Cabinet could be released from central inflation and contingency. So you had a pattern of the 3 biggest directorates overspending and the 2 smaller ones currently not overspending, and a gross overspend of £13.5 million. But as the rest of the report makes clear, that gets ameliorated to some degree. Section 2.8 at the time the report was taken through to Cabinet was referring to the as yet unresolved National Pay Award. It is now confirmed at £1,925. It is due to be paid in this month's pay packet, hopefully, certainly no later than next month's, and will mean that those costs are reflected in future actual spend. It's already been reflected in the projected budgets and spend, and of course the important thing to note is this council budgeted for exactly that sum, which means it doesn't create a further gap and pressure. Section 2.9, I've deliberately highlighted in bold that no responsible officer is authorised to overspend. And whilst that is a trite truism, it is one that we do remind all officers, and will be doubling down this year on it, particularly given the pressures are unlikely to go away. Section 2.10 does remind that we're in a fortunate position that we set aside £20 million in central inflation pots, mostly one-off, to help ameliorate some of these pressures, which were fully anticipated in the year. Section 3 sets out my position on the contingency fund, and it remains the case that I anticipate the contingency fund will be fully allocated for the year, albeit the second to last entry is now not needed to meet those unresolved National Pay Award issues because they have been so resolved. I draw your attention also to section 4, which is the summation of the inflation provision. As I've already referenced, nearly £20 million, mostly one-off, set aside in the first instance, predominantly for the energy cost spikes that we anticipated. And at the time of writing the report, there was still forecast to be £3.6 million available to ameliorate service overspending pressures. Section 5 reintroduces the savings tracker. During COVID, we stopped the tracker for a period of time. It has been reinstigated, and I am relatively relaxed that the first cut of that has indicated 70% on forecast to be achieved by the end of the year, and I would expect that to improve as some of the savings proposals firm up and are confirmed delivered. I would draw your attention then to section 6, which is the overall summary. The table pulls it together and emphasises that gross service overspend, the mitigations I have centrally to reduce it down to what I refer to as the net service overspend. It's roughly £9 million spread across the 3 big spending directorates, equally at about £3 million each. And as I've said again in the next paragraph, it indicates in bold, must bear down on those costs to try and keep within budget for the current year. The second paragraph B on page 10 emphasises again that our capital financing strategy and borrowing strategy continues to provide enormous dividends for us in the short term. They're not base budget matters, but they are very, very valuable to us in helping to mitigate our overall pressures. That's first quarter, I anticipate at least a £5 million in-year underspend on capital financing. Again, you've heard from me before as to why that is. We've borrowed at fixed rates, and those heightened interest rates on variable rates are very advantageous to us for our surplus short-term cash balances. I do expect that position to improve yet further this year, But we will see what happens in the national economy over future years as to how much of a dividend we are able to achieve as a result of that. But that is undoubtedly one of the biggest local benefits of the capital strategy that we've undertaken, a borrowing strategy in recent years. Section 7 sets out the capital budget, and I must caveat this because it was cut off a month earlier than the rest of the revenue budget monitoring, and one of the teething issues in Oracle is some of the project allocation costs. So I'm sure members will note how especially low the spend is at first quarter, and Cabinet members, the Chief Exec and I are concerned to make sure that we fully understand what has caused that. From my point of view, you always know that I'm rubbing my hands with glee whenever we don't spend the money because I'm making surpluses on capital financing and interest, but it is one that we are looking to double down and understand what has caused it to be lower even than the normal standards. The Housing Revenue Account in Section 8, which is ultra ring fenced and separate, is undoubtedly suffering its own inflationary pressures, but remains otherwise in relatively tidy state at the moment. The only other matter I'll draw your attention to, given it's a fairly long report, is the plan on a page in Appendix A on page 14, which summates what I've just run through in the Word document and in my verbal advice to you, which sets out that overall services are overspent. My amelioration advice to Cabinet, which was endorsed, the benefit of the interest charges being incurred, and of course the shortfall, because there is still a residual shortfall, is met from an anticipated further draw from earmarked reserves. The draw from earmarked reserves is there at over £20 million. That excludes schools because schools are financed differently. There will be a draw from schools reserves on top. The draw is material and clearly is not sustainable ad infinitum, but I would also emphasise that the bulk of the draw was entirely planned because the budget was set with a very substantial draw from the Economic Recovery Fund for Economic Recovery Fund activities, but also to finance that one-off turbocharged boost to the central inflation pot, which has enabled us to mitigate the pressures during the year. Rest of the report in normal format sets out the big variations on capital and also a director's individual commentary on their own progress during the year. So not that surprising, a first quarter report, overspent, slightly warmer than I would like, but I am confident that with the release of the central inflation pots and action being taken by spending directors, that the overspend will start to come down on services. There are undoubtedly risks still in there, and frankly, given every authority in the land is under pressure, I think that's a perfectly reasonable result for first quarter. But I'm sure you will all be concerned that spending pressures have not abated and the budgetary position is tight going forward for the coming budget round and into the medium-term financial plan. I think that's the only advice I need to give. I'll defer back to you, Chair, and I'm sure you want to bring in the leader in due course.
Thank you. Leader?
Yeah, I won't repeat everything Mr. Smith has said, but clearly the first quarter report is ordinary in all of its usual first quarter aspects. It is not unusual for us to show a potential overspend at this point in the year, but like Mr. Smith, I'm expecting that overspend to have reduced by second quarter. And again, as directors and cabinet members have done over a number of years now, get us to the point where there is no overspend as we get towards outturn at the end of the year. So again, the processes around that, working with department heads, working through potential changes to how we do what we do to make sure that every penny is accounted for, will, I think, get us to that position, and I remain confident of that. On the capital side, again, as Mr. Smith said, it is a bit distorted because it doesn't include, I think, everything that has actually happened given the early close on capital. But again, we retain a hugely ambitious capital programme, one of the biggest in Wales. So again, we will hope to see a significant uplift in terms of capital spend for second and third quarters. And again, you'll be expecting us to make further announcements on capital as we get towards the budget. That's all I've got to say, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Peter Black.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Can I just go back to paragraph 1.5? I know that a number of local councils are in trouble because of the equal pay issues, particularly Birmingham Council, which I think was a major factor in their bankruptcy. I understood that we'd settled most of this. I'm just interested into what's left in terms of which needs to be dealt with.
So perhaps I'll take a political view on that one. So clearly there is a potential risk for all councils with the consequences of what may have happened in Birmingham. What Mr. Smith is doing there is highlighting the fact that there are potential historical plus new future pay risks as a result of any implications from Birmingham and other issues. So at the moment, we do not believe we are in any sort of position of bankruptcy or significant huge pay claims coming to Swansea Council, but the risk exists across local government in England and in Wales. So until that's fully established, Mr. Smith is quite rightly raising the potential risk that's there. I don't know whether Mr. Smith wants to add to that.
Yeah, it's got his hand up. So do you want, Mr. Smith?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I mean, exactly. At this point in time, it's a catch-all. Like all local authorities, I'm still taking legal advice internally and externally, and you will not be surprised that I am prudent and I am making plans for making necessary arrangements, including provisions, if they are so proven necessary. But to reiterate the leader's commentary, as an officer, whilst I think the risks are there and are likely to grow, and that will be reflected in a major update in second quarter, I am absolutely of the same view and on the same page that any sort of risk we have is nowhere near the sort of scale that some authorities have got, where they're effectively facing an existential crisis. There may be some risks for us to recognise in second quarter. I will be bringing them through early. I can't say any more than that at this point in time, but the reason I wanted to reference it in the first quarter was to draw very specific attention to it, because it is a live risk for many, many authorities. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you for that. I mean, I wasn't implying that we were in a near bankruptcy situation or that we had an existential risk. And my understanding was that when we carried out this settlement and put a significant amount of money into it, that we'd had not only settled the claims, but we'd also put in place a structure which would try to prevent further claims. So I'm just interested that we now have a risk of further claims, given that settlement was in place.
I think if I perhaps just come back in, Chair, I mean, Birmingham were in exactly the same position. A number of other authorities, a number did settle, thought they'd put in place structures that were compliant and met the issue back in the day, but there remain growing external challenges and risks, which means a new risk may well have emerged. So that is the reason for my cautious advice at this early stage, albeit I'm reserving final judgment until I've gotten full external legal opinion on the risks that the authority faces.
I think we need to understand that external advice you have could be made available to the board as well, because I'm pretty sure I know what you're talking about, and it would be quite important that we knew what that risk, what the chances of that risk being on the council would be interesting for the board to find out.
So I would just emphasise, Chair, at the moment I do not have that final written advice, and I will take advice from the acting monitoring officer in terms of what can be released, I mean, to yourselves versus public consideration, given it is likely to be legally privileged advice. But I note the comment, and I will make arrangements in conjunction with other officers to make anything I am able to make available to you in due course. But I am just a little bit cautious, given that is likely to be legally privileged. And as I say, at this point in time, I do not have the full written advice, but I otherwise recognise the point you have made, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Anyone else, any questions, comments? Councillor Jones?
Yeah, apologies. I've only just come into the meeting, and I don't know what I've missed or whatever. I've scribbled a few notes down there and trying to decide.
We have, just to let you know, we have taken this in advance of a question of item 5, because we had technical problems with item 5. Okay. So item 6 we're dealing with now, and we'll go back to item 5.
Okay. Yeah, which this let's have a look. Yeah,
it's item 6 is the budget monitoring.
Yeah. Yeah, it was about the capital finance charges. I briefly caught something that you actually said when I walked in about the 5 million capital saving really on the finance charges this year. I don't know that the capital charges are due to actually tip over in the coming years. You know, when the MRP, shall we say, turns negative. But you've actually got on 7.1 just a comment now. It actually says there is an expected impact on the revenue capital finance and charges in 2023-24 and future years. what I actually said about the MRP and tipping over, is that what is expected?
So if I may come back in, Chair, there are two matters going on here. Councillor Jones is absolutely right. The advice I originally gave to Council made clear that the MRP review was a zero-sum game. There would be short-term savings and it would start to tip over and cost us some more money on the minimum revenue provision. That remains the case. And that is why underspends on capital financing have routinely been set aside into the capital equalisation reserve, which you will have heard me refer to every time we've had this discussion. But there is a secondary matter, which is that in addition to making sure that we've made all minimum revenue provision and set aside those savings in advance to recognise some of that seesaw tipping effect, we also beneficially gain from having borrowed that £210 million at 1 point something percent, and interest rates short-term variable at the moment are over 5%. So we lend out our surplus cash, and so that's a different matter. So there's two bits to this. Earlier years we had a gain on the minimum revenue provision. Now we are starting to see that part unwind, but in line with the strategy agreed in council. But as a super bonus addition for the last couple of years, our net costs of servicing the interest on the debt has been materially lower because of interest rates having rocketed away far beyond anything even I assumed, even though I thought we're borrowing at cheap as chips rates and we couldn't lose on that borrowing decision at the time. I think it's just paid us back in spades. That one is more temporary. That's I'm always at pains to remind Cabinet and this panel that it shouldn't be presumed that I will forever turn up with underspending on the capital financing costs. We are undoubtedly a major beneficiary of getting our timing right on that borrowing, which results in a significant difference between what it costs us to lend money out temporarily and what we've already secured the future capital programme from the PWLB. So there are two components to it, but Councillor Jones is right to remind that one of the components does start to tip slightly against us, but I have set aside quite substantial sums in the capital equalisation reserve to help mitigate that effect. I was anticipating all the way through to 2030.
Can I also ask as well about, well, you know, the current economic climate? I think I read, I'm not referring back, I can actually see perhaps the council tax arrears are not really a problem this year, but actually on the housing rent arrears, that seems to be a problem. I've never seen that as a problem before. That's 8.3, I think, yeah.
Yes, you're right, Councillor Jones. I mean, on council tax, you'll recall that other than last year, for the previous couple of years, we did run significant deficits of a couple of £1 million a year on council tax. Last year's outturn, we outturned at a £32,000 surplus, very modest on collecting £140 million quantum, but that position had indeed turned, and people seemed to be broadly, despite the tough economic circumstances, meeting their obligations to pay council tax. There do seem to be some growing risks on the housing revenue account side, which is why the relevant cabinet member and officers wished me to reference that. They're still within bounds of manageability, but it is a concern that clearly some parts of society are hurting more than others. And the economic position and outlook does remain somewhat fragile. Different commentators have different views as to the degree of pain and how shallow any forecast recession is likely to be. But that 2-year period of heightened inflation, even with inflation now on a downward trajectory, it's still way above anything people have been used to for the last 10 years. Interest rates are a long lead-in factor to people's household bills and their net money left over after meeting their mortgage or rent. So I think those risks are real, and that's why my housing colleagues wish me to emphasise that the housing revenue account was certainly under greater pressure than we've seen in recent years.
Yeah, just a quick follow-up. Sorry, Ben. You say the council tax collection is in surplus. Is that on the anticipated collection rates, or in terms of the quantum you'd want to collect? Because I know you changed the collection rates, didn't you, with this budget?
Yes, and that may be still beneficial to the authority going forward, because the £32,000 surplus was achieved last year at year end. But of course, because we'd had several years of falling short by a couple of £1 million, this year's budget was set on a much lower assumed collection rate. I think I set it at 94.5% of the quantum. Clearly, if we do return to surplus again at the end of this year, and in due course it's next month's council that the council tax base will be determined, which is a factor of the quantum of houses and the bands. And I think it would be remiss of me not to acknowledge that there are major announcements being made by Welsh Government later today on future arrangements for council tax from 2025. Yeah. But the other component is indeed my assumed collection rate. And I did give officer advice, which council followed, to materially lower it for 23-24, which should be beneficial to any likely surplus in the current year. And it is also something I will take into account in giving my advice to council in December as to whether the collection rate can start to be increased again. That was always part of the plan to try, we focus on a whole raft of cost of living measures and support measures to communities and diverted staff onto them. So it was not a surprise that the collection rate suffered for a bit, but it means we may have some further flexibility, given that we did lower the collection rate in for this current year. And I will, as ever, keep an eye on that and weigh it with the likely economic outlook as to what I think is prudent as to people's ability to pay when times are undoubtedly tight for every body, every organisation and household finances.
What was the collection rate last year?
I'm pretty certain I set it at 94.5% for the current year. I might be out by 0.5% because I'm doing it.
And we collected that much, did we? We actually collected 94.5, did we?
Yes, we did. We achieved a £32,000 surplus. So
yeah,
I'm confident that we're on an upward trajectory on both collection rate and any assumption I can give to council for decision when the tax base is set next month.
Oh, yeah, but is this about this item? Well, can you deal with the rest?
Yeah, I'll deal with the first point. So I was going to come in after Councillor Jeff Jones. So I mean, I think Mr. Smith would probably, if he wasn't on camera, be doing the "I told you so" dance, because he's absolutely got it right every time. I think we've had exchanges in the chamber previously where you've cautioned about borrowing and you've cautioned about the MRP, and Mr. Smith has proved to be right on all counts, because his advice to borrow when the rates are 1.96% means that we locked in £210 million of borrowing at the lowest historical rate we could. And as Mr. Smith said, whilst he can't borrow in advance of need, that has proved to be a very healthy decision. And because we haven't deployed all of that money at the present time, he's able to lend it back and earn money back. So we're able to repay all of the MRP and make money on top to invest and offset pressures. So it's a double bonus for us. It's a very good position to be in. And if you look at authorities like Cardiff, where they're about to embark on delivering an arena and doing some of the things that we've already done, they're going to have to go to the markets now at 5% or more. So the cost of them doing a similar scheme to ours will be significantly more to the Cardiff taxpayer. So, I think absolutely Mr. Smith was right, and he should be commended again for doing it. And had we have waited and listened to the advice we were getting from across the chamber, we'd now be in a position where we wouldn't have the money to deploy it into our schools, where we'd be going to the markets at 5 or 6%. And we can
remind the leader, this isn't a political meeting.
It's not political. I'm statement of fact here. I'm not mentioned any party. I've just said there've been debates where points of view have been put across which have been proved to be wholly incorrect and have proved to be wrong. So I'm just making that point. On the collection rate, just to clarify, yes, I believe Mr. Smith was absolutely right. It is 94.5%, but we exceeded that by a measly 32,000 in terms of the overall budget. And as Mr. Smith said, that'll need to be valorized this year in terms of where we think collection is. But I think it was the right decision to do that as well, because we've always taken a cautious approach, which is let's set it at where we think it will be, rather than put it higher and then undershoot and then create a problem of a gap. But again, it was quite right to make that assumption, because with us coming out of COVID, with people facing the cost of living crisis, collection rates were likely to be lower than we'd otherwise seen in previous years. So I think the assumption that was made was absolutely the right one.
Okay. Hang on now, Mary. Councillor Mary Jones.
Can I just answer that, actually say that, I do not give advice and so on. I just raised concerns, and I think Mr. Smith has done an absolutely marvellous job, but I think it's the part of the opposition is yes, and that's it.
Can I bring in Councillor Mary Jones?
Thank you. I'm in danger of forgetting my question. And I apologise for being late. Mumbles Road is flooded, but they're working on it. So we were stuck in the traffic. And unfortunately, I have to leave early because I'm going to the funeral of the late Councillor Margaret Smith. It's about the HRA, and Ben mentioned that the collection rate wasn't as good. And I seem to recall that in a meeting somewhere, the Deputy Leader, Councillor Andrea Lewis, actually made a comment about when we were talking about budgets, that people that have social housing, I think it's the council mainly, there's 70% are not going to be affected because they don't they're in receipt of some kind of benefit, so they don't pay their own rent or rates. Now, the point I got is, I'm sure somewhere when, oh dear, what's the new credit came in? Universal credit came in, people had to become more responsible for their own bills, whereas before it was automatically paid to the authority. Is there any way that are we able to track, is it the people that actually pay their own council tax that are in HRA properties, or is it people that are having difficulty because of the universal credit? And if so, are we signposting them for extra help?
Chair, shall I come in the HRA? Shall I come in on the HRA bit for a second? So yeah, you're absolutely right. I think the actual rate of people who get it entirely 100% paid by UK government is about 68%, and then there's 32% that pay some or all of their cash in towards their rents. And again, that is, I think, what Councillor Lewis articulated at the time, which is when we set rents for people in council properties, obviously there is a decision to be made on balance. I know that the team in housing have been working with tenants to make sure that they intervene early so that people don't get into significant arrears. I don't know whether we do an overlay of rents over council tax payments, but maybe that Mr. Smith can give us an idea of that one.
Mr. Smith?
So if I may come in, regrettably, I don't have an overlay on the two, but I equally wanted to follow up what the leader has said, and Councillor Jones is right to flag some points. They are two separate matters. Yes, it's about that 70% mark in terms of housing benefit for social housing, including our own council tenants. The collection rate is on council tax, and again, similarly, very large numbers are in receipt of 100% council tax reduction scheme, and that is also going to be subject to re-evaluation. The people who are struggling on council tax are the people who are just above the CTRS threshold and I've still got a full council tax bill to meet. That's the particular problem there. Those that don't pay it at all net, frankly, don't have a particular problem on meeting the council tax element. They've got plenty of other problems, I've no doubt whatsoever, given they are by definition on low means. So the final point I would make, which Councillor Jones is absolutely right on, the move to roll out of universal credit does complicate matters. It means that for us, in terms of granting council tax reduction scheme, which again, although it's an all Wales scheme, is administered locally as a local relief, but broadly on the same fashion across all councils. Universal credit does complicate matters in terms of benefit arrangements, because legacy benefits were less chop and changey in terms of their impact on council tax reduction scheme, and we are seeing multiple calculations for CTRS having to be made, and that has probably undoubtedly complicated people's personal budgeting circumstances. It is an unfortunate byproduct of a national change, which does cause some operational difficulties for my team in terms of the amount of processing, but also for individuals who by definition are not the wealthiest in society by any stretch of the imagination to be even in receipt of universal credit or to be eligible for some or all council tax reduction scheme. It is a complicated matter, and I think Councillor Jones was right to flag that it does cause some disruption, but I don't have a view as to being able to overlay it because we're still in the early stages of wide-scale universal credit rollout in this area, but it is undoubtedly having some disruption effect on individual households' ability to manage their budgets.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Just from me, it's the fact that on item 5, the savings tracker. Some years ago, we used to watch. I used to see the service tracker, and I'm wondering if we can have the savings tracker back, even if it's only in a confidential matter, that we see how the tracker's being implemented. Mr. Smith?
Yes, apologies, Chair. I was looking for my unmute button. So yeah, the summary is added in as an additional appendix just to get it back in, but I certainly have no issue with members having sight of the wider
Okay.
tracker to give them assurance as to what's been summarised in the public document.
Okay, thank you. Right, if that's the case, I will go back now to item 5, which is the public questions, and ask Mr. Ben Houghton if he would like. What I suggested to him is that he uses the first 5 minutes or so to give a brief outline to his questions, and then we ask the leader and the officers to give the best answers they possibly can, and then go back to Mr. Houghton for any comments that he'd like to raise after that. Okay, then over to you, Mr. Houghton. I think you're on mute.
So, is his microphone up?
We can't hear you at all.
Hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Brilliant. Sorry, I've not used Teams before.
We'll start the 10 minutes now, okay?
Brilliant. Thank you. So thank you, Scrutiny panel, for having me, and dear cabinet members. Basically, I want to discuss and highlight sustainability and future generation compliance to do with the Skyline update package that you've put in. How does the project demonstrate compliance with the well-being of the Future Generations Act 2015 Wales in terms of sustainable development, especially regarding the long-term impact and local ecosystem and communities? Question 1. I've mixed the questions up for priority because of the time limit. Given the public access impact assessment, can the panel share details on the impact assessment and how they allocate 37% of Kilvey Hill's open space to the Skyline project will be affected existing public access and 2 miles of concrete track over these areas, limiting recreational users and the site's ecology value? The findings in the Ramble Noise Assessment Report and the apparent limitations of accessing the full impact of the designated quiet area in Kilvey Hill, along with the notable absence of throughout public consultation prior to the planning application for the Skyline Luge Swansea project. How does the panel, how does the cabinet address the significance and concern, especially what steps will be taken to ensure the preservation of the quiet area's tranquility inside the quiet area, not outside or surrounding the actual tranquility of the quiet area, in line with the Wellbeing Future Generations Act? And how will the panel rectify the oversight of public engagement to align with the project and sustainable development principles and the protection of the local community interest, which is the council's responsibility to assess the changes in open access and the quiet area and have a survey of the people's opinion, how they want to deal with it. It is also right that Kilvey Hill is an area that does not have a habitat connection report, nor obviously the quiet area. And if there are these things, can I be pointed to them? Do they exist? And where are they available for public online to have a look? If obviously I'm wrong, but I hope I'm not. I hope I am wrong. But question 4: in light of the tourism needs and development impact assessment, the TNDIA, the significant reduction in the project's visitor numbers from 750,000 to 450,000 annually for Skyline Swansea project, and considering the crucial role of these figures playing into determining the project's economic viability and job creation potential, compounded with the recent project's cost increases from around 35 million to 40 million, interest rates are not outstripping inflation, so these prices are set to increase. As Ben Smith mentioned earlier, it's a balance between 5.5 and 6 point something inflation. It's a dangerous position. So even though the council's good position, anyone you're lending money to is in danger of bankruptcy due to the money and project costs completely going out of proportion, whilst already falling short of the BCR payback time. How does the panel reconcile the optimistic projections of the Welsh tourism trends and the Welsh attraction numbers not matching not matching their abroad destinations, as in their report it's all about other attractions that they have in place of international airports, big cities, etc. We're not in that position, nor population numbers. Furthermore, the specific measurements and contingencies are in place to ensure the projects will still deliver promised economic community benefits, such as job creation, local economy support, in the effect that realise the visitor numbers do not meet these, or further fluctuate. So basically saying, if these numbers aren't met, what's the alternative? Because it doesn't look like it, even from the Welsh barometer, Welsh Government Barometers Index. So I'm not sure where all the numbers are coming from because they're not public. If the visitor numbers are believed, then the carbon footprint would increase, and the visitor numbers and construction activities would lead to higher CO2 emissions, conflicting with regional environmental goals, especially with the plans of phase 2 expansion. Please, everyone, check out phase 2. Please show justifications for the proposed increase in CO2 from visitors and the concrete slab and the 2 miles of concrete track through our designated quiet area and open space. Question 3. Given the community involvement with the recent petition of 3,050 or so petitioners, with over 1,000 from Swansea, and also a survey conducted with 240 plus people, and in light of the PAC report, which is significant from Skyline, with a significant majority objecting to the project, and now with awareness of Kilvey Volunteers survey, as I just mentioned, conducted, so Kilvey Volunteers did that, in the larger principal level, how does the Cabinet plan to address the multitude of issues, particularly those relating to the environmental sustainability?
Can I interrupt you there? It was getting close. You're all well over the 5 minutes, and I think it gives an opportunity for the leader, cabinet member, and the officer to give some answers, because you may want to come back within that time. So
the first questions are definitely the most important, so I'm happy.
Okay, right. Can I ask the leader and the cabinet member, and maybe if the officer wants to add anything to it as well? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Can I thank Mr. Horton for his questions? They are very detailed. Unfortunately, I'm not able to answer in the way that perhaps Mr. Horton would want today for a number of reasons, which I'm sure members will be aware. Firstly, we have a live planning application now. I'm not sure if members of the Scrutiny Committee also sit on planning, but if they do, they may wish to declare an interest. That's a matter for them, obviously. But certainly, we do not comment on live planning applications, and I would not wish to step in and answer questions that are best placed at the Planning Committee. So, whilst I fully respect the questions Mr. Horton is asking, they are questions that are best put to the Planning Committee and for Skyline to address within their planning application.
Chair, can I just note, I'm a member of the Planning Committee. I don't believe I have an interest because I'm not going to comment on the planning application.
That's fine.
And the same for me. I probably will have left.
It's just I didn't want to say anything that placed anybody else in a difficult situation. So again, Mr. Horton,
that's the same for me, and that's the same for me as well, leader.
Yeah, so Mr. Horton,
but I won't be making any comment.
Right, so we've got 3 members of the planning committee. You're not going to make a comment on the plan application.
So, Mr. Horton, it's not us avoiding the questions, but it's just making sure that they go to the right committee or body in which to address them. And again, we don't generally comment before an application is heard before the planning committee. So there are certain questions you've submitted there which are for the planning committee to address and for Skyline to address in their application. In terms of and the order in which you submitted them in writing, question 1, 5 and 6 are ones for the developer themselves to address, not for the council. We act as planning authority in this matter. So question 1, 5 and 6 we will absolutely forward on your behalf to Skyline in order for them to respond to you directly. And then the remaining question, which is question 9, which is around the financials of this, The financials relating to the council's support for the Skyline development are currently on papers which are not made public, and therefore myself, cabinet members and all other members of this committee are also bound by that confidentiality as they're on yellow papers. So unfortunately I'm unable to disclose that financial information because it is not in the public domain.
Okay, would anyone else like to make comment on? Mr. Phil Holmes?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just to add to the comment made by the leader about the status of the planning applications, that is live, and Mr. Horton can access that full application via the council's planning portal. That is there's a link there for you to access that information, and by all means then submit comments through the planning process to be considered in terms of determining the application. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Horton, obviously you've heard what the leader has said and you've heard what the director has said. If there's any further comments you'd like to make, unfortunately on the planning issue we can't discuss that, but we can discuss any other issues that may come out of your questions.
Okay, so first I'd say that I'm actually querying about the consultation process of the quiet designated area and the open spaces being given away by the council. This is not a planning issue. This is a pre-offering land of public places to other entities. So it's actually not to do with planning at all. And these documents do not exist in the planning application. And I'm actually asking for those consultation details. So that's the first step of, it's not a Skyline issue. It's not a planning issue. It's a public issue of consultation over public land, which I'm asking for proof of that. So if I'd be kind if that could be provided. And then, I mean, the public awareness. I don't know if anyone noticed the Senate meeting yesterday where they're going to write to the council and ask awareness of us.
Can I stop you there?
Yeah.
The leader indicates that he'd like to answer the one about the consultation on the public land being given away. So if you take that one, then
yeah. So,
okay.
So the 2 points there. Firstly, I know Mr. Horton, when he made his original comments, suggested there was significant opposition to the Skyline proposal from surveys that have been done by Kilvey volunteers and others. I've no doubt there are a number of people within those surveys that feel that they don't wish to see some of the development take place. All I would correct the record on that one is that when formal consultations have been done, there is an overwhelming support from the people of Swansea for the scheme to go ahead, and that was evidenced in the consultation work that was carried out. On the second point that Mr. Horton has made with regard to the council giving away land or allowing use of land, there is a there's a lawful process underway at the moment for public open space notice. That has currently been challenged by a number of people in the area. So there is again a live process on that, which may become a legal process in due course. So again, I can't go into the details, but we are following the legal process in order for the council to proceed with the actions that it's laid out.
Great, thank you. Mr. Horton.
The land issues about squatters' rights over land the council don't own. Giving away public land and open access land and quiet land is a completely separate issue to that. Not only that, is the consultation of Skyline was 100 something people, not 240 plus like Kilvey volunteers, and the numbers of for and against were very low for both surveys. There was one done in 2017 and there was only like 15 people from the surrounding area of the hill. And then, so ours is very comprehensive with a very good report written by a doctor. I invite you all to read it in the supplied information I've given you. And also there was over 1,000 people in the petition from Swansea area that basically in the Senate paperwork. So I'd ask you, once the full raw data is out, to go and analyse that yourself. I've put a report in the supporting material of my questions with that data and a breakdown of the Swansea numbers in the petition. So all of those answers I don't agree with. Sorry. Shall I move on to my other points of disagreement?
Yeah, unfortunately the time is up But if you can
Okay.
be very, very quick, a couple of minutes, because I think it is important that you get the opportunity. A couple of minutes.
So obviously you can't comment on the planning, which is crazy because a lot of the issues are not to do with planning. It's quite a whitewashed excuse. But 58 responses in the planning pack report for Asbury planning, only 4 and 50 out of 58. So I can't see how it's literally in the own documents. The public support is very low. It's not. There's disabled access as well. For people in wheelchairs, I completely understand the need of it. But whenever I'm up there, I meet people with mental health problems, and they need quiet and they need space, and they literally hide from me thinking I'm Skyline up there. So when I talk to them, they use this space and they use it quietly and they use it for their disabilities. You can't see. So I'm getting emotional now. Anyway, I think it's all in the document. So I think I'm done now. I think I've made it clear. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. There's no reason why you shouldn't get emotional if you're that dedicated in the subject. But thank you very much for coming online and asking your questions. You will get written answers to some of the questions, and you're more than welcome to come back at a future meeting to discuss it again. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Leader.
Chair, I do have to make one point. I think for the benefit of all members on the call, our choice not to comment on planning and to get involved in a live planning application is not a whitewash. It's not avoiding the question. There are strict rules set for all members in this authority, which we have to adhere to. And whilst I might want to enter into debate with Mr. Horton, and I'm more than happy once the process is concluded to have that discussion with him, I cannot do so when a live planning application is, as members have said on the call. It is not avoiding the question. It is us not breaking the rules that are set.
The leader is quite right. We have very, very strict rules when it comes to planning, and those rules have to be followed. Otherwise, we could get into the serious problem with the Ombudsman. So it's better that you listen to his advice, and that is the fact that we can't comment on any planning issues. Whether you agree or disagree that a planning issues is the advice that we've been given by lawyers. But thank you. Yeah, you will be able to go in front of the planning committee and make your representations that you've made here again today. Okay. So, okay. Right then. Thank you very much. Can we move on now to item 7, which is the regeneration project update? Councillor Robert Francis Davis.
Sorry. Lee Richard will go through that, and I will reserve the right to come back at the end. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Richards.
Thank you, Chair. Hopefully you've had an opportunity to read the Skyline report, so I'll just pick up the salient points. So the council received a direct approach from Skyline Enterprises Limited in 2017 to develop land at Kilvey Hill. The enterprise it's a global tourism leisure experience and operator, and has venues in New Zealand, Canada, South Korea, Singapore, and later this month it's opening up a new venture in Malaysia as well. And since that time, Skyline has developed its proposals, including its business plan. Skyline is an experienced operator, and the Swansea venture will be the first in Europe. So we welcome the key win for the city and, of course, the wider economy, and much needed tourism. And Skyline itself is a large parent company, and in the agreement that we have with Skyline, they will act as a guarantor for the purposes of the lease. Turning quickly to the actual main body of the report and Skyline, just to highlight that the project will be located at the Havard Copper Works in Kilvey Hill. It's intended that a gondola will take you from the Havard Copper Works site to the top of the hill, and then you'll have views over the bay. There'll be some food and beverage facilities proposed at the top of the hill. Equally, there'll be some free linear parks on the way up to the hill as well, which are being introduced following the public consultation. And equally, there'll be the gravity-based leisure attractions as part of the experience. Importantly, Kilvey will still have access to walkers, mountain bikers that can actually use the gondola to access the top of the hill, but equally they can also undertake that by the current configuration. That is in no way at all any restrictions to access there. Again, importantly, as there's been some comments on this, the proposed gondola that starts at the park and ride will not pass over any residential or commercial buildings. And just turning back to the attractions, not only does it include obviously the gondola and the luge tracks, but it includes some chairlift that'll take you back up to the top of the hill to continue with your luge runs, and equally it has a new zip line and a sky swing, and Swansea is the only second location globally to have this zip line, which is actually able to go around corners and take you back to the top of the hill. As I've just mentioned, there will be free and unhindered public access to the hill. It will remain, and there is no change to its current access position. So all current walk-in mountain bikers will remain. And as you're probably aware, one of the Skyline team has a disability, so it's really important for them that access for wheelchair, pushchairs, etc. is incorporated and has been, I understand, incorporated into that design. As the leader has mentioned, Skyline has undertaken a pre-application consultation process in March, and all the details are contained as part of the planning application. And as has equally been mentioned, that application actually went live yesterday. I can, Chair, if you wish, actually send to you the link to that Mr. Houghton should be of interest as well. And again, just responding to Mr. Houghton, as part of the lease, which includes the land that will be part of that lease, the council later this month will also, as part of its duties, progress a public open space notice consultation period, and you will see this in the local newspapers, and we will be putting notices on all access points and on top of the hill in hopefully the next 2 weeks' time. So just to conclude, Skyline will now progress its planning application, and it'll work up the next phase of the scheme and hopefully commence on site sometime next year. Thank you, Chair.
Robert Francis Davis, do you want to make a comment?
Yeah, I've been working on this for many a year now, and I'm absolutely delighted that the planning application has come in. I think this will be tremendous for tourism, not just in Swansea, but for Wales. It'll be a major tourist attraction. Tourism is exceptionally important to Swansea. We get over 5 million visitors coming into Swansea. It's worth over £5 million a year to Swansea, our tourism. But this is now taking it to another level. They are an enormous global company. This will be the first in Europe, and I'm really pleased that they've chosen Swansea. And why have they chosen Swansea? I think is you've got Kilvey Hill with views over Swansea Bay, which is absolutely spectacular. And it's something that we probably never taken advantage of. How many times have I been up to top of Kilvey Hill? Only by car going up, because I'm waiting for new knees. I got COPD. The only way I could get up these days is by these telecabines. I suppose probably I've spent 20 years going skiing and affected my knees, but every village you go to in Austria and many parts of France and Italy, these telecabines can be seen quite often and are very well used, not just by skiers, but by people like walking during the summer months and people that do mountain biking as well. It's a spectacular view from up there. The numbers that have been estimated will be changing our tourism strategy in Swansea. We are looking at a destination within the Morver area. We've now seen Penderyn open there. We are doing through the levelling up and the river corridor. And I think this will be the real crux of the matter of bringing those tourists to get access to that area. So I'm really looking forward to it, and I think that the people that I've talked to, and I've spoken to many different organisations, and I must admit I have found, in fact, every time I've spoken to people, I've had nobody actually challenging me in publicly about whether it's the right thing to do. Everybody, the response I've got, can't wait for it to come here and be opened. Thank you.
Leader?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. And I won't repeat what's been said by both Lee and Robert Francis Davis, but I just wanted to add a little bit of context, really. It is really important, as Rob has alluded to, that we've got a very successful tourism industry in Swansea and South West Wales. We want to add to that. You know, the arena is providing several 100,000 extra visitors a year. With Skyline comes online, you're looking at close to 500,000 visitors a year, rising to 750,000 visitors a year from that. And as has been said, we've also got aspirations to deliver an aquarium and other attractions to really make Swansea a destination. That's over 1 million additional visitors a year coming to Swansea, staying in hotel rooms, eating in restaurants, shopping in shops, spending money with taxi drivers, spending money in local businesses. That is why this is important. And, you know, I really would like to see this development happen. I've like Robert, I've been working to try and encourage lots of companies to come and invest in Swansea. As Robert alluded to as well, the hill is inaccessible for many people at the present time, and we do see regular fires up there. We do see cars being burnt out. Again, making sure that the hill is properly managed with all of the free access available to it, and also the ability for people who can't currently access the hill to be able to be taken up there in a cable car and enjoy the views over the best part of the bay looking towards Mumbles, is surely something we'd all want to see happen. I think you know, the partner we've got in Skyline have proved that they're capable of running really successful facilities around the world. And just on the financials, I know I can't go into what's in the report as I couldn't with Mr. Houghton, but we've been very clear publicly. This is replicating the sort of support that we would give to companies across the region and across Swansea. It is a proven process whereby in the early phases of a project, you provide some additional capital in, which is fully repaid. We do it in the city centre all the time when we want to see buildings regenerated, when we want to see things created. We will co-invest with a partner on the basis that that is fully repaid, and then that money, once it's repaid, is taken onto the next scheme and it's used again and again and again. It's recirculated. That's absolutely right, because that way you get the investment, you share some of the risk initially with the company, but then you share the benefits as well. Our position has been, we're not giving money to any company, certainly not a company that's not based in Swansea, but we will co-invest on the basis that is fully repaid. And of course, as we've said, if successful, that provides a long-term income stream to the Swansea taxpayer from that facility, as well as all of the extra benefits that additional tourism would bring to the area. So again, you know, in terms of our strategy to make Swansea a really successful destination, to make it a growing city, you know, this is a key part of it. If it didn't go ahead, then clearly it would have impacts for the river corridor, the levelling up bid. It would have impacts for Penderyn Whisky, which have invested heavily in that facility. It would be a major blow to our aspirations for a tourism economy. So there would be really negative downsides if it weren't able to be supported and if it didn't go ahead. But I'm hopeful that you know, we will see a fantastic facility operate there.
Okay, thank you, Leader. Councillor Peter Black.
Yeah, my questions are going to focus entirely on the council as opposed to like not going to comment on the application. Just a couple of questions really. In terms of the land, my understanding is are we seeking possessory title for some of this land in the land registry? And if that's the case, can you give me an update on what the situation is with regards to that? And secondly, in regards to the finance, I understand that we have made a commitment to lend money to them as the leaders outlined. Can you give an undertaking that that is the total of the amount of money which we've committed to this scheme? And are you able to give an update on any additional money the Welsh Government are likely to give to the company at all?
Can I suggest that some of these questions need to be answered in the...
Well, I'm sure the leader will say we can't say it.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, I think given that one is commercial and the other one is relating to a legal process, they're both, Chair, if you're in agreement, they're both better dealt with in private session.
I agree. Any? Oh, Jeff, sorry.
Yeah, I suffer with my knees as well, so I never get up the hill as it is. Yeah, this is not advice. It's just a question, you know, about the viability really of it. You know, these you mentioned 450,000 or 500,000 increase in visitors. How viable is that? You know, where do those figures actually come from?
Those figures are coming from Skyline themselves. And when I've looked at perhaps other their business plans in South Korea, I think they estimated 1.2 million. I think they got to that figure in about 10 months rather than the first 12 months. So I think they're a proven company with a proven track record. They would not invest the money they invest unless they are pretty certain that they will get to those figures. Nothing more to add on that, really. You know, they are based not just in New Zealand, they're in Canada, they're in Singapore, they are in South Korea. They're opening the second one in South Korea because of the success. They got two in New Zealand, you know. I remember the first time the leader walked up the hill with them, and I think Alan Wynne-Jones walked up with them, and he was waxing lyrical about his time when he was with the British Lions, actually visiting the one in New Zealand, and who had personally seen it. So I am convinced that their figures are accurate, but only time can tell that.
Okay, so it's Skyline's figures. And the other thing, you could 2.10 years. Sorry.
Can I just come back, Councillor, on just one point on that as well, just to follow up what Councillor Francis Davis has said. As part of the process, Skyline undertook a number of independent reports in terms of its business plan, and equally related to the tourism figures. That was undertaken by an independent company as well, and that was provided as part of the business plan that came forward and went to Welsh Government too before they provided their offer for financial support.
This 2.10 year Skyline has advised the cost of the project has increased to 40 million. Why is it actually, you know, what was the original cost, and why is it increased to 40 million? What's
Inflation.
So what was the original?
35 million.
35.
Yeah,
So it's
inflation plus
5 million.
Plus, they've also taken on board comments from the consultation process. So, for example, you'll see within the planning application, in response to the comments, a new linear park free to all will be included, as well as other ventures as part of that application as well.
Okay, so I know it's got to go to actually to planning. Is that the final figure?
It may change, Councillor, but of course, all the costs are being picked up directly by Skyline, not the local authority.
We've got a fixed contribution, plus the Welsh Government are going to fix, and that's it. It's not going to change. Not going to change at all.
No, that's correct.
Can't tell me what our contribution is at this present time.
Yeah,
In private session, yes.
Anyone else? Any more comments?
Yeah.
Oh, Councillor David Jenkins. I think you're on mute, David.
Thank you, Chair. On the tourism there, the figures, are these likely to be even more if the development encourages, like cruise ships to attend Swansea? That's the question.
The figures that are being quoted are the figures as Swansea stands today. Well, personally, my ambitions, and I think we're all ambitious to get as many people to Swansea. I think I would love to see in future regeneration projects like Blue Eden, and when the tidal lagoon is put in, my aspirations would love to see cruise ships coming into Swansea. I was in Mykonos the other day, and there was actually 5 cruise ships in Mykonos taking people in. Imagine tens of thousands of people going into what that does to the economy. I'm also conscious that we are now going to have a free port either side in Neathborough Talbot and down in Milford. And we have a deep sea harbour. Even if a cruise ship didn't come into Swansea, cruise ships, potentially enormous cruise ships will go where there are destinations to take people to go and see when they go there. And I think cruise ships coming into Milford Haven, for instance, within just over an hour away, those are the sort of trips that they sell to the passengers to come. So I think they could be open to a lot more than what is estimated. But again, time will tell if we can get the cruise ships coming into South Wales. Cruising is getting far more popular. Cruise ships are getting bigger. There's a natural harbour down in Milford. So why shouldn't they be coming in? Have we got the right product? I think we are blessed to live in West Wales, which is probably some of the most attractive coastline in the world, And when you look at Pembroke, Carmarthen, and Gower, if you bring the people, they will visit.
Eventually.
If you build it, they will come.
Yeah, okay. Right, anyone else? No? Right, can I thank you all? Oh, sorry. Oh, Councillor Susan Jones.
Thank you, Chair. I just wondered, obviously Mr Houghton has got genuine concerns. Is there a plan to actually meet with this gentleman and discuss some of his concerns?
I think a lot of his concerns, Councillor Jones, are in the view on the planning committee. So I think it would be appropriate that he actually attends the planning committee to discuss those items. And it would be wrong of anyone to discuss the planning issues who sits on the planning committee beforehand. He's more than welcome to contact his local members as well to discuss it with them. And we'll be giving in some written responses to the questions he's asked.
I just wondered if the leader and maybe the cabinet member would be perhaps appropriate to meet this gentleman.
I don't know. That's entirely up to them.
Thank you.
Councillor Jones, I'm sure you know it would be inappropriate at this time to do so. But as I said, prior to the planning application coming in, and once the planning application has been heard, I've already given an offer to meet Mr Houghton if he so wishes.
Thank you.
Okay. Is there anyone else? Any comments? No? Okay, can I thank you all very much for coming? Obviously, if you will stay, because on item 10, we have the exclusion of the public. The next item on the agenda, item 8, is the work plan, which starts on page 26. Okay. Right, then we move on to the various letters that we've sent off to the cabinet members on item 9. Okay, right then. Then we move on to item 10, which is the exclusion of the public due to the fact the issues that we're going to be talking about are confidentially registered as being of commercial interest to a third party. So those discussions will be held in camera. Can I have everybody's agreement on that? Okay,
Mr.
all
Houghton's
agreed?
good.
Pardon? Okay, obviously, anyone who's not on the committee will now, Mr. Houghton, you will have to leave now. We're also stopping the recording.